What's the breadth of what we can see today with the Microsoft technology?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So we're going to look at the initial fundraising, the reporting to the Board of Trustees, and we're going to kick off with Simon.
Yeah, thanks very much, gentlemen. So just to give you a bit of background, so the fundraising accelerator that we have at Pragmatiq is built on Dynamics 365, which is Microsoft's cloud-based CRM platform. So as a software as a service or SaaS-based solution, it gives charities secure, scalable foundation that fits naturally alongside the rest of your Microsoft tools. So if I look at the top hand left-hand corner, I can see the rest of the Microsoft applications that I would be accessing online. So using the fundraising accelerator, charities can manage their entire fundraising operation in a single application, which means capturing fundraising end to end, from the initial campaigns, the appeals linked to those campaigns, to funds, whether those are restricted funds or they are open funds, managing the events that go alongside that, any proposals where we're seeking, say, corporate fundraising activity. There's donor commitments or donation management, managing the pledges that sit behind that, capturing the financial transactions flowing from Business Central, so we can mark transactions as paid or unpaid, and then also managing the all-important gift aid submissions along the way. So importantly, it's not a standalone solution. The solution is very much focused around the fundraising side, but also the events management piece is coming from what's called Dynamics Customer Insights Journeys, which is Microsoft's marketing tool. So that also allows you to manage your outbound communications with individuals, whether they be donors or various other service users, for example, as well as also managing events. But it's all on a single data platform, with it allowing you to kind of interact and capture all of those interactions in a single source of truth. That's the picture from sort of the fundraising and engagement perspective on our side. Matthew, bringing in Business Central into the conversation, what does this look like from sort of a finance perspective?
Sure. Thanks, Simon. So if we look at my screen, we're able to see that we can set up our chart of accounts for a charitable organisation with donations and legacies and investments. And also, though, we started the journey there, but how are we going to end up our journey? We're going to end it up with financial reports. And yes, we want to be able to see our cash flow and everything else. But actually, we want to be able to design reports in here for our SOFA reporting, see what our surplus is, net change this year, net change last year, what variance have we have year on year, but also then be able to filter by funds, so restricted income, unrestricted, or income type. So income type might be donations, gift aid, government funding, grants, legacies. So we can do all of that sort of filtering against our reports in here as well.
Oh, that looks great. That looks great, guys. So how then do the funds raised come into the system, and what does that look like?
Great question. So in the fundraising system, we're going to be able to look at pledges, donations, and direct debits, all forms of charitable income that we need to be able to handle within the system. And over to you again, Simon.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matthew. So within the fundraising accelerator, it's really where we see that life cycle coming through from sort of a donation perspective. So if we start with some proposals, so for many charitable organisations, you may be seeking to receive some sort of donation or corporate partnership from businesses, whether they're in your local community, or indeed it might be sort of the national pots of funding, such as the National Lottery. But effectively in here, we have the concept of a proposal. Now, you can think of it somewhat like a sales proposal, but this is essentially where we're seeking an amount of money. There is a process to then go through in order to receive that funding, and we then want to forecast that from a business perspective to say, actually, as a charity, we're expecting X amount of money within this given period. So, for example, here we're looking to essentially go out to this particular organisation called Brightnell Limited as part of one of our campaigns and receive some funding. So you'll firstly see that we've linked this to our winter campaign in 2025, so we can track the overall campaign that this proposal is linked to. Then the individual appeal. So we have what's called a corporate appeal, which is effectively just a way of categorizing that into a particular pot of money, so we can manage, how much money we've raised for the overall campaign, but also at the individual levels of an appeal, and then record that, as I said earlier, into a specific fund. So in here, we can see sort of the type of ask that we're making, how much the ask is for. So in this case, it's £4,230 when we're going to ask. And then we've got a bit of a process bar at the top to effectively guide our users on sort of what needs to happen. So this one is somewhat generic that we set up as part of the Fundraising Accelerator. But for you as a charitable organization, we could customize that to fit your particular processes. But the main aspect of this is we're then tracking that there is a particular amount of funding we're looking to receive. Now, you may then ask me, but what about individual givers who are giving on various donation platforms? So we then have what's called a donor commitment. So this is exactly the same as whether that's a corporate organization providing you with a donation or whether that's an individual doing some giving. But essentially, we have what's called a donor commitment. So you may just consider this to be a donation in many other fundraising platforms, but for us, it's a donor commitment. So essentially, this is a particular gift. So in this case, you can see there's two types of gifts. If I go into that particular gift, we've effectively got the details of that. So in this case, it's a regular gift. We can see who that particular constituent is. That could be an organization or an individual. We then have the concept of a subtype of gift. So it could be, in this case, a standard gift. We could create custom ones for, say, a luxury gift or anything else bespoke to your organization. We then have the date of the gift. We have the concept of splitting a gift. So you might want to effectively split that donation, mainly to put it into two different pots. If you have, say, a restricted fund and an unrestricted fund and you want to split that out, we have the ability to do that. And then you'll see it splits out the split gift at the top. And then there's even some logic behind the scenes that effectively tells us that the allocation doesn't amount to the total value, just to make sure we've done that correctly. But in essence, we're then just capturing, there is a particular donation. What was the payment method? We've got some controls around in memory of, so if people are giving legacies, anything like that. And then against that, we then have the concept of a transaction, which I'll touch on a little bit more later. But this is really where it kind of brings Business Central into the picture. So once we've got that donor commitment, someone's given us or is going to give us some money, all of the downstream reconciliation would then be handled within Business Central.
Fantastic. Thanks, Simon. That's a really detailed overview, and really like how the appeals and the campaigns can be linked, so you can, I assume, do some reporting at that higher level.